like coming to Hope because we get to sing, we can dance. I like the animals and craft time.
I look forward to playing with my friends and playing outside.
I like the skits. They're just funny and entertaining.
Bartholomew, hey Thomas, Matthew, James, come follow.
I like the Hey Ho Time to Go song.
I like the one where it does the gritty in it.
I like the train one.
I really like the one that was like, hey, oh,
Time to Go.
those you know, all of them.
Here's the deal, he's got a lot of love and it's for real. He walking along the shores in Galilee, telling his disciples come follow.
Tomorrow I'm bringing a friend.
Yes,
Yes? Who is it?
Jack. He's right there. Well, online, Jack.
Who'd you bring?
Ryan.
So Asher brought Ryan and Ryan brought Jack? Is that how it works?
Yes, I brought one today.
Yes,
Who's your friend?
Zen. But I might bring one tomorrow.
Hey, oh, time to go. Hey, oh.
It's important to invite people to VBS because more and more people can know who God is then. So then you learn more about Jesus and God.
This one I think will definitely stick from today, Joshua and Jericho. I think it's just a cool Bible story.
So that people that don't have enough food for this summer we donate the food so then they can have more food.
Hey front row, hey back row, he's calling, come follow.
Okay.
Hey all kids, it's Jesus, he's calling, come follow.
Okay.
Matthew 4:19, time to follow. Giddy up, let's roll.
Didn't anybody else get the memo? It was wear your helmet to church night. No, you just saw a great video at VBS this week. This is what I got to wear for 2 solid weeks, including the t-shirt. However, I will tell you straight up, I had 2 different shirts. So this is not 2 weeks of shirt that I'm wearing right now tonight. But it was nice to kind of come in for the last 2 weeks and be a complete fool for Christ. I absolutely loved being a part of VBS. I've been a part of VBS around here for a very long time. But the last couple years, I've played Buzz Flashlight or Light Bulb, whichever iteration you want to believe. And it's just a joy to put on this thing every single day. And so I thought I'd bring it back out again tonight for one last hurrah before we retire it until maybe next summer. And it was nice to tell you, waking up every day, and Ben can attest this too. You didn't have to worry about your wardrobe. You get up, you knew exactly what you were wearing every single day. For those of you that may struggle with wardrobe choices in life, that was kind of refreshing, to kind of not have to worry about what shirt I was going to wear and things like that. It just was a really cool couple of weeks where we get to be totally, as tonight's message will bring it to, undignified for the Lord. But let me just start by just telling you a little bit about who I am, because I don't get to do this very often. I'm the online ministry guy now for Hope, and so I'm usually out there hosting or out at one of our sites hanging out with them. It's rare that I get a chance to kind of be with you all here. So if you've joined in the last couple of years and you've not really heard this part of my story, as far as the preaching side of it, let me just bring you up to speed on how we got here. I've been on staff at Hope now for 23 years. I was hired in the summer of '99 to be a youth director and hang out in our student ministry department. Absolutely loved students. That's what I wanted to do coming out of college, was hang out with kids and tell them about Jesus, and so I did that for a while. But here's the thing about youth ministry. It can be a little tough at times. And there's a lot of folks, the time that people stay in youth ministry varies, the length of time especially. Anywhere from as short as, 6 to 18 months if you get burnt out to, as long as God finds that you're still effective in ministry. So here was my prayer all throughout my ministry so I would know when it was time to move on. And I would say it exactly like this. Dear God, please don't let me be the guy that stayed too long at the party. If you've ever hosted something at your house before and there's that one person that just won't leave, like they need to know that it's time to go home, maybe that's never happened at your house, but that's kind of how I wanted to feel through the rest of my ministry. I didn't want to be still in student ministry and not be effective or as effective as I could be for the kids because heaven matters. And if you're not being effective, it might be time to transition into something else. So here's kind of the trajectory of my story. I stopped being cool when I was 25, but nobody told me until I was 40. So I spent a lot of time hanging out with kids and doing a lot of fun things not being cool, which is, I mean, half of it is, when you try and be cool, you're not cool, So when you try not to be cool, I don't know. I still don't have it figured out. But when I was ready to transition, a really cool thing was happening around Hope. We were streaming our service out to the world, and there were people watching. And one of the core values that attracted me to Hope was lost people matter to God, and so they matter to us. And I thought, who are these people that are worshiping online? Why are they worshiping us? Where are they worshiping from? What's their story? I love stories. And so I wanted to get to know them. I wanted to hang out in our online ministry world, which was a little bit like the Wild Wild West to kind of fit with our theme for VBS. There are a lot of churches that were starting to do online ministry, but nobody really had it figured out. In truth, we're still figuring it out. But it was fascinating to me. And so we were streaming the service out, and I wanted to know who these people were, so I had this crazy idea one day. So why don't we grab a camera, and I'll say hi to folks. I think I had watched like an award show, like the Oscars or something, and there was that person that when they cut away to commercial, when we come back, you're going to hear so-and-so. I thought, let's do that for online. So we put a webcam up in the room up there, and I got the leadership talked into letting me do this for the Ash Wednesday service at noon, because that was a lot less risky. I couldn't break anything then. There was probably only going to be about 5 people worshiping online at that point anyway. So he turned the webcam on, and they said, Mark, you're live, and I had to say, welcome to Hope. My name is Mark Brandt. We're so glad you're here. We believe it's no accident. We've been praying for you. And all of a sudden, that experience changed. People sent me emails right away saying, oh, wow, it was so great to know that somebody cared that we were there. We live in Colorado Springs. That was one of my first online members, Joan Hanlon from Colorado Springs. She's still a part of the Hope family living out in Colorado Springs. It was fascinating, these folks tuning in and being a part of our online ministry. Well, over time, as people got connected to us and we got connected to them and they felt like Hope was their church home and they didn't live anywhere near us, they said, why don't we do church in our neighborhood? I said, okay, let's do it. I had no reason to say no. And so our first local site was born in Forest City, Iowa, which was actually where I had my first call-in ministry at a church up there. A group of folks wanted to get together and hang out and do church. And so they did. They gathered around a projector and a screen at the YMCA there, and they started church. 25, 30 people started showing up. Well, that was kind of fun. I thought, well, this has got to be something. I didn't know what it was yet until somebody else asked in Ames, hey, Mark, what would it look like if we did something in Ames? All right, why not? So our now campus in Ames started out as a local site, people hanging out, doing church together. And over the course of the last several years, we've launched a lot of different local sites. Right now, we have active sites in Forest City, Clear Lake, Iowa City, Bondurant, Kansas City, Panora, and Omaha. We had a site in Winterset, and we're launching a site this fall in another town here in Iowa that I'm not ready to tell you where it is yet, but I'll just give you a hint. There's some people out there right now driving really fast in a circle. You can maybe work that out a little bit. But I tell you that also to encourage you, like if you're ever traveling and you find yourself in some of these cities, there's a church for you. Hope has a home. Drop in. They would love to have you. They're all volunteer-led. They are great people. Absolutely love them. But that's what I get to do when I'm not up here doing this, which is very infrequently. But to do something like that, we had to be bold. We had to try something. There weren't a lot of people doing church like that around the country. Trust me, I looked for them because I wanted to learn from people, learn the best practices for how to do this because I didn't know what I was doing. Being bold sometimes in our faith can move and advance the gospel in ways that only God can do. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight, being undignified for the Lord. So you're going to get a little bit uncomfortable, I hope, tonight. I hope God maybe works on you a little to say, how is it that God is going to call you to be a little more bold in your faith? Because this story that Mia read from 2 Samuel about David coming back into town and dancing before the Lord is rich. It is fascinating, David dancing. Now, I kind of have to back up a little bit because the Ark of the Covenant, the presence of God, was a big deal. And it had bounced around a little bit. And David was finally bringing it back to the city of David. He was finally bringing it back to a tent that he had constructed, and it was going to dwell there. And he was so moved by the fact that it was coming back home that he decided to dance. Because why wouldn't you? But David didn't just decide to dance. He decided to kind of strip down into his priestly garment, or however translations call it. And we don't really know what that means. He just wasn't wearing very much, okay? And he's dancing in the street. That actually, on the screen, is an artist's rendition of it I found online. Somebody was there and they painted this when they saw him doing it. So, no, not really. But this might have been what it was like. Now imagine the king. David at this point is king of Israel. The king dancing in the street, not wearing very much because God was on the move. This is a big deal. What does dancing look like for you? And this is metaphorical for a moment. I'm putting in quotation marks because not everybody in here is a dancer. Some of you just frankly should not dance. That's okay. That's me. I am not a dancer. It's not one of my spiritual gifts or my actual gifts at all. But for some of you, dance is an awesome thing. Do that. Be great at it. But when we do it for the Lord, God can do great things through it. So what is your dancing that maybe you've been holding back a little bit on? Because the people who saw David, they're like, man, dude, seriously, dial it back a bit. You're kind of being a little weird. What does this look like for you in your world? Because if we're honest, I think sometimes we as human beings get a little self-conscious about how people see us. And so we don't take risks in life or in faith because we're afraid of how we might be perceived. But let's learn a little bit from David. Like I said, we're going to get a little bit uncomfortable tonight. Let's learn a little bit from David in this. Because David in this moment, honestly, didn't care what others would think. I mean, basically wearing what he was wearing, you got to not care. You got to be doing this for a reason other than the approval of people. That's the riskiness of faith sometimes. David didn't care what others would think. Do we? Do you care too much sometimes about what people would think? Let me give you a great example of that. Growing up, I had a thing about my hair. Even back in the late 80s, I was spending $25 for a haircut. That's a lot of money in 1980s economics to get a haircut. Nowadays, I am, sir, would you like me to trim your eyebrows? Years old. Totally different experience. Don't spend that kind of money now on a haircut. Some of you in here can appreciate that time of life. But back then, I really cared about my hair because I wanted to look good. I wanted to look good so that people would like me. I was in it for approval and for acceptance. So I went through a series of crazy hairstyles. 1987-ish. I'm in 8th grade. Actually, more like 85. And Growing Pains was on TV. It's an old TV show. You can Google it if you want and look at a couple episodes. But Kirk Cameron was on that show. And Kirk Cameron had awesome curly hair. So I announced to my mom one day, I want a perm. And she, being a great mom, said, why not? So we went and I got a perm. Now, for those of you that this is not like something that's in your story, you can't undo this, all right? When you get a perm, you're committed to this thing for months. So I went in and it smells. Man, it is terrible to go through that process. But my hair looked really cool and curly on top. And I thought I looked awesome. Did it improve my status at school or elsewhere? No. But I thought it would. And once you do that, you can't just wash it out the next day and go, well, that was good for a day. Nope, I was stuck. I was rocking that curl for about 3 months. Fast forward, 9th grade, I will call the season of the bowl cut sun-in hairdo. For those of you that are old enough, sun-in was a product you could spray on your hair if you didn't want to go to the haircut place and have your hair dyed. I wanted to be blonde. I had a season where I thought I needed to be blonde to be liked by people. And I was also outside a lot that summer playing tennis. And so I'm sorry, if there are any hair professionals in here, you might want to cover your ears right now because you're not going to like what I'm about to say. I put 2 full bottles of sun in my hair to go outside and play tennis for like 8 straight hours. That's the equivalent of going to the pool every day for an entire summer. My hair was not only fried, it was very, very, very blonde. But I looked cool. It was awesome. Did it help out my acceptance and approval? No. Most people said, Mark, why did you do that? But I had to do it because I cared what people thought. Fast forward to sophomore year, which I will call the beginning of the mullet that I had for the next 2 full years. Business on top, party in the back. You can imagine it right now. And the ironic thing is both of the perm and the mullet have come back in the last 5 years. Have you noticed that? Like full circle. But I grew it out. But the crazy part of my mullet was that part of the back of my head curled outward and part of it curled under. So I had to, once again, not wanting to look foolish, I had my mom teach me how to curl my hair. So every morning I would wake up and I would curl the one side under so that it matched the other side. Those of you that's a daily thing for you, that you curl your hair, man, I respect you a lot because you are playing with fire. I burned my neck so many times with that thing because it takes a delicate touch to do this and not, first of all, burn yourself, and second of all, not fry your hair again. But I had to look good. I have kept it through my senior pictures. So it is immortalized. I'm not going to show you that picture because I know, sorry to disappoint you. But I haven't said this at all this weekend. I had a double whammy in my senior pictures. Not only did I have a mullet, but I was also rocking a cardigan with a thin, skinny black tie. I mean, you don't get any cooler than that. At least I thought. It's funny what we'll do sometimes because of how we care about what people think. It's easy to get comfortable or to play it safe, when in all actuality, there's nothing safe about our faith. It has to be out there. It has to be risky. Sometimes we have to do things that will advance the gospel that might be a little bit out of our comfort zone. A mullet is way out of a comfort zone for most of you. But maybe where we're at right now is that your faith is more like it's on cruise control right now. Just getting by and kind of coasting along. I love the cruise button, especially when I travel across states like Nebraska, because it's great to just set it and forget it and just drive. Nothing bothers you on cruise. It's a great, easy way to go. Faith can be like that. We can get in cruise control. We can try not to rock the boat. We get comfortable. We're like, man, I just want to go through life and not be necessarily challenged in my faith. I just want to be able to show up and go through it and not really care. A lot of folks find themselves in that trap. I've been in that a lot. Even around here, working here, there are times when you can get in a rut and it kind of becomes a little bit of the same old every single day. Let's look back at David again. David didn't allow that to be something that drove him. He got undignified before the Lord. He danced before the Lord because he realized there were bigger things at stake. When we get comfortable in our faith, we can tend to kind of even hide it at times. Have you ever, like people have been talking about, man, I would love to know more about the church and about faith, and even though you have a story to tell, you hold on to it a little bit too tight? I've done it. One of the fascinating things for me that I get to do when I'm out here also is I love to play golf, and I love to join up with other people. Like, I don't mind playing by myself and meeting up with new folks. But it's fascinating to me about hole 3 or hole 4 or hole 5. At some point, the questions gets asked of me. So, Mark, what do you do? And up until that point, here's the fascinating thing. The people have been very authentic. They've been their true, real selves because they have no idea that I work for a church. And then when I tell them, oh, I work at a church, I wonder what's going to happen next. Because there's a couple choices that those people have at that point. Am I going to behavior modify into something I think will be more acceptable? Or am I going to continue to be myself? And let me just tell you, as a leader of the church, I love authentic. I would much rather people be authentic, even if it means you say a few words you probably shouldn't. That happens in golf. Because that is real. In fact, God really loves your authentic self too, exactly as you are. Are the things that God wants to refine in you? Absolutely. But God loves our authentic selves. So when I finally tell people that, hey, I'm a pastor, like, well, I want to apologize for, the thing I said back on the third green. I'm just like, well, hey, it's not me you have to worry about. That's one of my jokes that I often tell them. Because it opens up a conversation. I love the conversation that can happen when people are authentic, when they're open to what God can do. When we get complacent or comfortable in our faith, we lose out on moments like that. It's really easy to be a person of faith in a moment such as this, where we gather on a Sunday night to hang out at church. You're among friends. This is a place where it's safe to be a person of God, to be a Christian. However, when we walk back out those doors in a little bit, the world is going to be around us again, and we're going to be challenged by maybe, is that okay? Is it safe anymore? And I don't mean safe like there's danger, but I think safe and more like it's comfortable. And church can also become that. Even though we're in here every week, there are certain things that can happen in our church life as well, where we can play it safe and put it on cruise control. Where church can become a habit instead of holy. Where it just becomes the box that we check on a weekly basis, not really showing up expecting God to do something in our lives, but showing up more so because it's a habit that we have. There's nothing wrong with habits. In fact, if church is a habit, that's a good thing. God can work with that. But if we come in here really not ready to encounter God, we kind of close ourselves off to some of those things. It can also become comfortable instead of convicting. In truth, I think God wants to do work in us. And when it's comfortable, when we kind of come into it thinking, I'm good, that's a little harder to work with. And the third thing is when it becomes a little bit too much about ritual than revelation. I don't want church ever to feel like that for you. And if you're in a season right now where it's just kind of going through the motions, maybe tonight can be a way to jumpstart it a little bit. And be reminded that God wants you also to be undignified. God is calling you into the game to do what God has called you to do, to share the good news with other people. Because this is meant to be shared. If you had some amazing, awesome, change the world news about something that's maybe more worldly, we can be in a hurry sometimes to share that. If you have a great rumor, you're thinking about, who can I tell? Who do I need to call? Who can I text right now? The story of Jesus and God at work in the world is the greatest story ever. And we're called to be the bearers of that story. Not to hide it away, not to hold on to it. We're called to share it, whether it's through words or actions, however. We're called to be actively engaged in advancing the cause of Christ. There's a story later in Matthew's gospel, and if you're new to the Bible, Matthew's gospel is a lot of fun. Because there are a lot of stories in there that are called parables, where you get to hear Jesus tell a story to help people understand things of faith. This one in particular I absolutely love. It's toward the end of the gospel in 25. And I'll just sum it up for you to get to this verse. The master of this house is leaving on a trip and entrusts 3 servants in his household with his wealth. Some translations say talents, which isn't like things you're good at. It's more like a value added sort of a thing, or silver, or something like that. One servant gets 5 of this value, one gets 2, one gets 1. And he's just told to be they're told to be good stewards of it while the master's gone. So in that time frame, the one that had 5 invests it and gets back 5 in return. So now a total of 10. That's a good ROI for those of you that are business folks, return on investment. The one that had 2 invests it, gets back 2 in return. Another great return on investment. But the one that had 1 was conflicted. I kind of think of this servant in the same vein as I would when there's 1 Oreo left in the package. And you look at it once I eat that Oreo, they're gone. Not like you can go to the store and get more, but they're gone. You look at that one Oreo becomes precious. And in my household, at least, we guard that cookie. My boys have been known to hide that final cookie at times because they don't want it to go to anyone else but themselves. Well, that's what this servant does. There's fear that creeps in because of this 1 talent, this 1 coin that they're given. And so he or she buries it in the ground to make sure it's safe and being able to be returned to the master intact. So when the master comes back, Jesus tells the story. The 3 servants gathered and brought what they had to the master. The one that had 5 presented 10. Well done, good and faithful servant. The one that had 2 presented 4. Well done. The one that had 1 said, I saved it. I preserved it. It's here. And I'll sugarcoat the next part because when Jesus tells the story, he gets a little after this idea of when we're entrusted with something of value, we're entrusted with it on purpose because there's value in us. And that's why we're entrusted with it. He said, I would rather you had invested it than saved it. The parallel to today is we're entrusted with the good news of Christ. There's a lot of value in that. We're entrusted then to share it in whatever way that could look like with the world around us. Not to hold on to it or to hide it or to be ashamed of it in some way. And sometimes that might mean putting on a helmet that you got off of Amazon or putting on boots and a cowboy hat and talking in a southern accent as Ben does, as Billy Ray, for 2 weeks. There's a difference in being a fool and being foolish for Christ. We can do a lot of dumb stuff. That's the fool stuff. Being foolish on purpose can add a lot of value to the gospel. Because I'm going to show you a picture of my son Noah. Because right at the end of this passage in Samuel, I'll go ahead and advance to the next screen. David says, I'm willing to be even more undignified or more foolish than this, even to be humiliating in my own eyes, because it has purpose. He was a pirate this year for Halloween. He's now 17, going to graduate next year. We have senior pictures coming up next month. That is a weird moment for us as parents. He has a twin brother also, so double senior pictures. Although he actually was the one that suggested, hey, we'll take a picture together, to which my wife was like, are you serious? Like, that was a big moment, because there are times where, like, our other son who's a musician, there are people in his choirs that like, you had a twin brother? Because they never hang out. They're totally different kids. And there are people that didn't believe that Luke was a twin. This is Noah. But Noah rocked that pirate. Like, he was so happy to be a pirate. He was saying "arr" the whole night. He would go up to the door, and he was fully all in on being a pirate. And I was proud of him. Like, this is awesome, dude. You can't get him to make this face now if you paid him. I mean, there's this phenomenon that happens. This, I think, is a parallel to us as we're talking about what it means to be undignified. When we're kids, like the kids of VBS, we have no problem being, yeah, let's go, we dance around, we do actions. We have zero issue with that. Then this thing called junior high happens. And at that age, we kind of become a little more aware of our surroundings. And we decide that we're a little less, we're a little more. And then adulting happens. And when we become adults, we become important. And we put our hands in our pockets and we walk around, I'm doing important stuff. I can't be bothered to act like a fool today because I'm important, don't you see? And I'm being way, way over generalizing on this. But there's an example in this of what it means to be foolish for the sake of the gospel. I have done some foolish things in my ministry for the sake of students over the many, many, many years. I've shaved my head completely bald. And my wife, after the last time I did it, said, that's never going to happen again until you have to do it. Because there's a lot more gone on top than there is on the sides. She said, that's just not a good look for you. But I did it because it brought kids in to the church. I ate an entire can of Spam one time because I lost a game of air hockey. There are 16 grams of fat in a serving of Spam. There are 6 servings of Spam in a can of Spam. I was a music major at college. I count to 4. But I can do this simple math because I had a calculator. 6 times 16 is 96 grams of fat. And the kids absolutely loved it. That's like your month's allowance of like fat and sodium. It's crazy. And it really wasn't that bad, actually. Spam isn't terrible. I actually like it. I didn't tell them that because I wanted them to be grossed out by it. David decided to humiliate himself in a way. And there's an important piece I don't want you to miss in that passage of 2 Samuel when he and his wife kind of talk about it. He points out there's servant girls, there's servants out there that I think when they saw me dancing, they saw the king willing to be lesser than. And if that got them to be more comfortable with who God is, that's why I did it. David decided to strip himself of the things that made him a king. First and foremost, because he absolutely loved God. But secondly, because it could potentially bring people to understand who God was. We are foolish with VBS because it helps kids get to know who Jesus is. And Pastor Mike is famous for saying, if we get the kids, we get their parents. We don't mind looking a little foolish to make God known. There's something to be said about that. In fact, if you got a chance to witness VBS at all, if you're a volunteer or if you even saw it at all, our senior pastor was chief and front and center every single day. And you'd be hard-pressed to tear him away from that role. He absolutely loves it. And I'm here to tell you, there aren't a lot of senior pastors of large churches in the country that would do that. But it's important to be a little undignified if it allows us to open up the good news to others in a way that might attract them. It makes church cool, I think. In fact, one of the favorite things that I've heard people say around here in leadership, and I think is very true, is we take God very seriously and not ourselves. I think if we get that right, taking God very seriously, that is important. Not taking ourselves very seriously, that's also important. I feel like it might make church a little more accessible to somebody who otherwise might think, man, that's not for me. Because make no mistake, when we go out here and just a little bit out into the world around us, there are those around you that won't understand when you're trying to live out the good news. It's hard to see this picture. I tried to blow it up, but it got really pixelated. But that's Noah again. He's got the ball in his hand, and that's me right next to him. We're refereeing third grade basketball. One of the things that I get to do, which is awesome, is I referee basketball a lot. I've done it for over 20 years at the high school level and all sorts of levels. But Noah, who's 17 now, I've wanted to get him into it with me because I think it's a great way for him to not only get exercise, he's been around basketball his whole life. He knows the rules, so it's really kind of an easy transition for him. But I just love doing it with my son, too. I mean, a little selfishly as a dad, if I get like 4 hours on a Sunday afternoon to just hang out with my kid and we're doing something like that, I'll do it every single day if I can. But in this story, David's wife looks on at him being silly and pulls him aside and says, David, you're embarrassing the fam. How dare you do that? What is going on in your head? Why would you even do this? There are those around you, and when we start to really live out our faith that aren't going to quite understand the why behind it. They're going to try and detract you a little bit. Trust me, refereeing high school basketball around the state of Iowa, I've had some people that have said some things to me that weren't always that kind from the stands. It is crazy sometimes the things that people say. But I'm here to tell you, I don't hear it. I mean, I do, but it doesn't really faze me anymore because I've done it a lot. In fact, I just know that those people that are saying those things know about this much about basketball, whereas I have to take a test every single year. I get evaluated by people who have been doing refereeing far longer than me that help me be a better version of that when I go back out on the court. And to be honest with you, I don't do it for the parents in the stands. I do it for the kids on the floor who are absolutely in love with the game of basketball to help it be as fair as I possibly can. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. Have I had calls before that have gotten on the evening news? Yes. Just last year, in a big moment. It was the right call, though, although half of the crowd didn't think so. But the point of it is there are people that are going to come after you in your faith at times. They're going to come after you when you try and live this out. Because the devil wants nothing more than to de-escalate the cause of Christ. And when we start to be a little more out there in our faith, be a little more undignified, be ready. Paul will even go on to say, hey, consider it a joy when you get, humiliated or persecuted a little bit. Because that means you're doing something that's causing people to wonder what God is up to. And a quick public service announcement with my son Noah, too. There are a lot more referees that look like me than look like him. So, if you're out at weekend stuff, go easy, would you? Or if you see people that are maybe being a little bit sideways with folks, remind them, hey, I don't mind if you get upset. Honestly, if you come to a game this fall or this winter and I'm refereeing, I don't mind if you get upset. I can take it. But my 17-year-old son, on the other hand, and these younger officials and umpires and folks that are getting into this, they're walking away because they're not willing to take it. And we need them. Because I've got a knee that's not as good as it was anymore. I'm carrying a little more than I probably should. I can't chase these kids as well as maybe some of these younger kids can. This parallels right to our faith stuff. When we get the pushback, it'd be really, really easy. If you're willing to start stepping out and being a little more undignified and you get that pushback, it'd be really easy to go right back to being safe. But God wants you to let your light shine. Earlier in the Gospel of Matthew, he's telling a story in the Sermon on the Mount where he says, I don't want you to hide your light under a bushel. I want you to put it on a lampstand for the world to see. I want people to be able to see this. And you have a God that says, I'm with you when you do it. We don't have a God that says, oh, good luck with that. Hope it works out okay. No, if you're bold enough to want to step out and to be a little more undignified in your faith, God is ready to step into that with you. And big things can happen. Paul would even go on to say it in Romans in his letter to that little church. I'm not ashamed of this good news about Christ because it has the power to save. You also don't have to worry about saving anybody. Let God do it. You're just called to be the message bearer. Then allow God to do the work that God can do in the life of that person. And you might say, well, I don't know the words to say sometimes. Here's another crazy, audacious thought, because I know it's true. And Ben would probably even back me up. If you don't know what to say, if you're confronted with something, it's easy to say this: God, please give me the words to say. And once again, God's not going to say, oh, good luck with that. Sorry, I'm busy right now. No, God's going to do it. God's in the business of doing that. I can't tell you the number of times when I've been in front of somebody and I'm prompted to share a story that I haven't talked about for a very long time. But it's exactly the story that that person needs to hear to relate to their life, to say, oh yeah, I can understand that. And man, I want to know more. If you allow God to begin to work, you don't have to be up here and talk out of your face and have studied it for as long as maybe Ben or I have. In fact, I still have to sing the books of the Bible song to figure out where like Amos is in the Old Testament, okay? And I've been around the Bible a long time. And I am not ashamed of that at all. There's a lot. There's 66 books in this Bible. I can't know where every single one of them are. If that's you, good for you. That's not how my brain works. I'm okay with that. You know who else is okay with that? God. He's totally fine. Because you never know when it's going to come up where you're going to have an opportunity to talk about God. It might be like this last story I'll tell you. This past winter, I was refereeing at a school district. I'm not going to say where. It's not important. But I was sitting in the locker room in my stripes. It's always fun in context, of things. When I'm wearing my stripes, I'm in there to do that. But I can't stop being this just because I'm wearing stripes, even though it is kind of fun to blow my whistle at people, especially when they're making me a little upset. But in that moment, I was sitting in the locker room, and the athletic director from the school came in. And we got to talking about, this is early in the week, and he had a little snack bag, I think, with him. I said, what's that for? He's like, oh, we take food and we put it in kids' lockers on Friday to take home with them over the weekend for those kids that maybe don't have enough for that weekend. He said, we like to sneak it into their lockers because we don't want them to feel stigmatized for having to come to the office and pick it up. Guess what we at Hope were doing right around that time? The Super Bowl food drive. And this school district wasn't on our list, but I went back to our mission folks. First of all, I kind of stepped out in faith and I said, if I could get you a bunch of food, could you use it? He's like, really? He goes like, yeah, people are bringing in tons of food this weekend. Let me see if I can get a whole bunch and send it out to you. And we got one of our volunteers to come out in a truck and pick up a truckload of food and take it out to this school to help bless those kids. And now they're going to be on our list moving forward. But that doesn't happen if we don't talk about things of faith at times that maybe aren't like just in church. It's amazing what God can do when we actually boldly ask God, what can you do through me to impact this world around you? And actually, more truthfully, that's you doing that. Many of you probably gave food during that Super Bowl food drive. If you're new to us, we're going to bring it back again. It's an annual thing we do. But you can give even today. Look at all the food that's out in the gathering space right now from the kids in VBS. God has a story that he wants to tell through you. And like every good thing, we need to kind of get ready, right? If we're going to do this, if we're going to go out and you're really going to maybe activate this in your life, we need to prepare a bit. So we're going to do that right now. One of the best ways to prepare, like if you're going to go out and like when I referee, I have to stretch because my joints don't work the way that they used to when I was younger. I'm not as limber as I maybe was. So it's always good to stretch so you don't hurt yourself. So we're going to stretch a bit right now, by singing a final song. And you know, I'm not going to tell you you have to change your posture. If you're still a hands in your pocket, that's fine. This guilt-free. Once again, it's not me you have to worry about. So, but if God is moving you a little bit, maybe use this time to limber up a little bit. Be open to God, okay, is this me? Do I need to be a little more undignified this week? Because Monday is coming. There's somebody in your sphere that maybe you're not even aware of, but maybe you are, who you can be a good news bearer for. And we can use this song as a way to kind of limber up a bit to be ready to go. So I want to invite you to stand and sing now as Jacob and the band comes back this final song.